Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Gilbert, and I'm an educational consultant and coach at the Center for Responsive Schools.
Hi, I'm Kristen Vincent. I'm the Director of Marketing for Responsive Classroom, and I'm here to support Ashley and our special guest. So I'll be working behind the scenes in the chat, so feel free to drop any questions, and I'll talk with you there.
We're happy you're joining us for our first 6 weeks of school conference webinar series. I'd like to take a moment to give a warm welcome and a very big thank you to our guest, Missy Testerman, for joining us. We're super excited to have you at our webinar. We're looking forward to hearing more about your work as a 2024 National Teacher of the Year and an ELL teacher, and also program director at Rogersville City School in Tennessee. Missy is a featured speaker at the first 6 weeks of school conference this upcoming July, and we're excited to spend the next hour diving into her work. So welcome, Missy. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to learn more about you and get to know you.
Thank you, Ashley. I am thrilled to be here. So thank you for having me on the webinar tonight.
Of course. So we're just going to get started right away. Take a moment just to tell us a little bit about yourself and share with us your journey in the education field.
Sure. So my name is Missy Testerman. Like you said, I'm the 2024 National Teacher of the Year. I have 33 years of classroom experience, and I have sort of the age-old typical tale. I went to kindergarten as a 5-year-old. I fell in love with my kindergarten teacher. Her name was Mrs. Brown. She was so cute and warm and welcoming, and I just became obsessed not only with Mrs. Brown and with kindergarten, but also the whole teaching and learning process. I can remember being so excited to watch my classmates also learn new things. And I was amazed that all that had to happen was Mrs. Brown had to show it to us, and then we knew how to do it. And throughout my career, I just had wonderful, nurturing teachers who just affirmed that I wanted to be a teacher. And so I made it through high school and college, and I started teaching in the middle of the 1991-92 school year, and where I taught first graders. And over the course of my career, I've taught first grade, second grade, and then a few years ago, I moved over into the English language learner role.
That's quite the journey. Thank you for sharing that. I want to kind of take a moment just to build on that. You shared with us your journey in sort of learning how you wanted to become a teacher. But as you got into that career, were there a few key insights or maybe some experience that shaped the way that you approach teaching?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, I had so many positive role models in my own world as a child. And I was so fortunate when I began teaching first grade. I was paired with the most wonderful mentor ever. Now, like most 21-year-old recent college graduates, I had thought I was going to work with really cute, young, trendy people, and my school instead put me with some really old people in their early 30s. And it was a blessing for me, because I ended up getting to work with a lady named Mary Jo, who just took me under her wing, and she taught me everything that she knew. And she was so focused on every aspect of the child, not just how they did academically, but how they were functioning socially. You know, did they have friends? Did they feel like they belonged? She made sure that everyone always felt included. And she was a big part of my development. I was also able to work for a principal who was just fantastic, and he saw it as his role to not just help teachers grow in terms of being able to deliver academic content, but also to grow as leaders. And he was very, very pivotal in my development as a classroom teacher as well.
I think so many of us share stories like that. Thank you for sharing yours. Missy, you're the 2024 National Teacher of the Year. Tell us about that experience. What is it like? What does it entail? Tell us.
Well, I will tell you that every time I hear someone say, or that I say, I'm the 2024 National Teacher of the Year, it doesn't feel real. And I was announced over a year ago in early April 2024. My term will go through June 30th of this year. And it still doesn't feel as though it's real. I'm just so thankful that I've had this opportunity, Ashley, to be able to advocate for America's teachers and America's students. And it's just amazing. When I was in my very small school, our school only has around 650 students in grades pre-K through 8th. We don't even have a high school. When our students
Wow.
graduate from our 8th grade, they then transfer into the county system where they finish their high school education. But in my own small school and in my own community, I always saw how hard teachers work and how much teachers care about students. And the most wonderful part of being able to be the National Teacher of the Year is getting to see teachers all over the country who are exactly like that. When you are the National Teacher of the Year, probably the best part is the engagement with educators from across the country. But one of the real perks is that when you are your state's Teacher of the Year, you become part of a cohort of all of the state teachers of the year across the country. So there are 55 of us, all 50 states, plus the United States territories and the District of Columbia. And we met several times in person throughout 2024 and 2025 at the National Championship Games. So that is a rock star teacher from every state and territory across the country. And you get to learn from those people and see and hear the types of exciting work and the care that they put into making sure that students are growing academically and that they're exposed to things outside of the classroom that will help make them better citizens when they grow up. And that part is just absolutely phenomenal. So being the National Teacher of the Year was never on my bingo card, but
Sure.
I am very, very happy that it ended up that way. And it's just affirmed what I've always known, that America's teachers are just phenomenal humans. You know, they're out there making sure that these students have a good future, that they have the foundation and the opportunity to build a good life for themselves, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background is, and so forth. And it just makes me really proud to say that I'm a teacher when I get to witness these things happening all across our country.
Boy, what I wouldn't pay to be a fly on that wall in the room with all those educators. That would be incredible. What a dream. You talked about meeting all sorts of different educators from around your state, around around our country. How has meeting them sort of impacted the way that you approach teaching and education since sort of receiving this honor?
I think that if anything, and I have to thank the members of my cohort for this, I think a lot of times all of us, no matter what our role is in the education field, we kind of get boxed into thinking, I teach a primary grade, that's really important. I teach middle school, that's really important. I teach high school, I teach music, when the reality is that every single role, whether you're a kindergarten teacher, whether you're an advanced placement teacher, whether you are the ag teacher who is teaching kids real life skills, whether you're the media teacher who is showing kids possibility of a career field, every single one of us do something that matters in a child's life, through that lived experiences of being in school. And so just understanding that it takes all of us to create students who are ready for the real world has just been so pivotal in the whole National Teacher of the Year experience for me.
So interesting. I'm curious to know, so you've gone out and you've been all over the globe, the country, right? Thinking about what you bring back to your school and your students, what is the impact that you see in your day-to-day life with your students? Because you're still teaching.
Actually, I'm on leave this year.
Okay.
I'm on leave, which has been a
Temporarily.
very big transition for me. I was the teacher who recently missed school, and so to be out having these experiences felt very, very off kilter at first. And at first, trying to go to school when I was home and to do all of these things until my schedule got super busy. But
Yeah.
no matter where I am, when I see great ideas, when I see great teaching, when I see communities doing really cool things, I'm constantly sending back memos and information to my school about, have we looked into this? This school does this. Something that I've noticed is this, because the reality is that none of us have it all figured out. No system,
Mhm.
no matter where you are, has it all figured out. And I've had the advantage of seeing how places do it different ways, and hopefully have passed some of that wisdom back to educators in my own area.
It sounds so rewarding. The things that you're doing, the people that you're meeting, and even just kind of growing yourself as a learner. So I'd like to just take a moment and really just pick your brain a little bit. What's been the most rewarding part of using your platform of the National Teacher of the Year to advocate for students or educators, particularly, and you mentioned you're from a smaller school, particularly in some of those rural or those more diverse communities?
That's an excellent question, actually. So whenever you teach in a rural area like I do, a lot of times we don't have a great number of community partners
Mm.
because there just aren't as many businesses and industries available. We don't have a bus or a subway that takes kids to college. A lot of times we're remote, we don't have the same opportunities. But through this lens of being the National Teacher of the Year, I've gotten to see how other states do it, how they're working together to offer students things virtually, how they're making opportunities for students. And anytime I can take something back that helps the students in my own area, that probably for me is one of the most important parts of all of this, because I'm very, very passionate about the belief that every student in our country, regardless of where they live, should have access to a world-class education. And it's hard for our rural areas a lot of times to offer many of these things, but I've seen this year that there are states and counties and districts who are just offering phenomenal things to their students in ways that bring the learning into the classroom or allow students to go out into the real world and see things. So that's obviously, very, very important to me. And the teachers that I work with they're always wanting to do the right thing for their students. And so they're receptive and thankful for any opportunities that come their way.
That's a nice little segue for this next question that I have for you. So, thinking about those other teachers who, you mentioned earlier that, when you started out in teaching, you were so blessed to have an incredible mentor. What are some key messages, or what are some things that you would like to communicate to teachers who are just starting out in their career, or even some of those who are discouraged or overwhelmed? Because, as you said, I mean, teaching is challenging these days. Talk to us.
Yes, absolutely. And teaching is hard. We
Mm.
can't deny that teaching is hard. It's not just hard physically, it's hard emotionally. It is a job that it's hard just to turn off our brains at night when we're worrying about our students until the next day. It's so emotionally demanding. And over time, that can really, really take its toll on a teacher. But if I were talking to a new teacher, I'll do that part of the question first. The first thing I would say is to find your Mary Jo. Find someone who in 10 to 15 years you want to be like this person. And, a lot of states and schools have excellent mentoring programs, but sometimes the mentor you get paired with is not exactly someone who's in line with what you want to be someday. And sometimes you have to go out and find your own mentors. But when you go to someone and you say, hey, I just really admire you, I would love to learn from you, a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, that person is going to be so thankful that you have that view of them, because the reality is our young people are so important to the climate of our schools, the culture of our schools. Every study ever done on school climate has shown that the happiest faculties are those who have a really good mix of new teachers, less than 5 years, mid-career teachers, 10 to 15 years, and veteran teachers. So it takes everyone along the continuum to make it work. And those new teachers bring in a level of energy that no one else has, and that enthusiasm. So that teacher that you ask to mentor you is going to be so honored that you feel that way. And what you're going to do for yourself is not only that you're going to be able to learn from a teacher who has fought the battles, been in the trenches, you're going to also make an ally, someone who will have your back throughout the time that you work together. And all of us need that guidance. Every single one of us, need that guidance in our careers. And teaching is so hard that we need the support of other people. And what I always like to tell teachers, no matter how long they've been teaching, you can have a bad day. That doesn't mean you have a bad job. Wash off what you can at the end of the day. Go back in with the attitude that tomorrow is a new day and it's going to be better. But if you're locked into a situation where you just are not happy in that school environment, maybe you need to leave that school environment. I'm not saying leave the profession. I feel like a lot of times teachers feel unhappy in their job and their current situation, and so they decide to leave the field. Don't give up on the whole field yet. If it's okay to leave an environment that you don't feel like you're doing well in, but try a different one before you leave the profession entirely, because we need you. You went into education because you had this passion for helping students learn. And I feel like for most teachers, it's still there. But just because you've had a bad day, just because you have an unpleasant placement, doesn't mean that this is a bad job. So that would be my encouragement. Also to take care of yourself physically and mentally, and to turn off from school. I know that's hard, and I do a terrible job of that. I will just own that immediately. I am a major hypocrite for telling you, turn it off, leave when it's time to leave, because I don't always do that. But sometimes your brain has had all that it can take. And the best thing that you can do for you and for your students is to take a break from that, do the things that you like, the things that recharge you, that re-energize you, that make you feel like a human being. And then hopefully that will help you reset so that you can meet the challenges of this job.
What I heard you say is work is important, but not more important than you.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. That's such an incredible insight. I'd like to take a moment just to kind of dive into a little bit more specifics related to teaching, sort of your specific work. So setting high expectations for students is one of the bigger key themes of the work that you do. How do you set and maintain these high expectations while ensuring that your students feel like they're capable of meeting those expectations?
That's an excellent question. And throughout the course of this year, that has become kind of my side platform, that we to be demanding a lot from students in order to get a lot, just like a lot is demanded of us as teachers, but there has to be a balance of doing that. So my suggestion is always that you start that very first day with really high expectations of, this is the way that we do this. And yes, we are going to redo this because I want you to do it the right way. Once you learn it, it's going to be easier moving forward because you already know how to do it the correct way. So a lot of that involves having routines that the students can predict because they're pretty much the same. I know there are interruptions to the school day all day, every day, but it's still possible to have some sort of routine that your students need and you need. And I've found that no matter the age of the student, they all need some sort of routine. But during the time that students are learning, particularly really, really hard concepts, probably the hardest part of our job is convincing students that they can do something even before they really can, just so they can calm down enough to learn how to do it. And that involves the teacher, really pumping up the student that they believe in them, that they know they can do it, providing those scaffolds that they need. Then when they can do that, removing those scaffolds a little bit at a time and moving the goal. I feel like teachers are the best in the world at constantly moving goals. For a lot of people, the goal is here. But I feel like with teachers, the goal is never here. The goal is always further and further and further up. And I feel like our best teachers are so great about helping a student feel confident about what he or she can do while also pushing them to do more and more.
It's so interesting. We see it, right? And I think the people who are listening, my hope is that they've seen it too. Can you share with us maybe a specific example? You mentioned sort of starting out with routines at the beginning of the school year. Can you think of some examples where a strong start to the year had a lasting impact on student success throughout the school year?
Absolutely. So lots of stories pop in my head with that question, Ashley, or lots of situations. But the one that I want to talk about most is I had a student who had some severe behavior issues.
Mm-hmm.
He was that student, the one that everyone in the grade knows because his reputation kind of precedes him. Unfortunately, that happens in school settings. We understand that. But I'm thinking of a little guy who came into my classroom. I was teaching second grade years ago. And from the beginning of the school year, even before the school year began, I met with his mom and with him, and we talked about what a great year that we were going to have and talked about all the ways that we could make it great. And so I was very, very focused and scheduled without being incredibly rigid, because we know that a lot of times students who are trying to adapt their behavior have a really difficult time doing it if there's complete rigidness. There has to be some leeway. But what had happened as a result of his behavior issues were that he had missed a lot of kindergarten and first grade. He'd been removed from the classroom. He had not had access to a lot of the instruction that others were. So he was significantly behind. So we started where he was, and I just kept edging him forward and making a big deal of how hard he was working and what a great job he was doing to learn the things that he needed to learn. And it wasn't a perfect year. I'm not going to sit here and say he never had anything happen again, because that's not what's true. But he was a transformed child. And that was not just from my perception, but it was my students' perception, and also other people who worked within our school community were like, he is not the same student. And I feel like it's because he was held to high expectations, but he understood that no matter what he did, he was going to be supported. And his mother was fabulous. She was just thankful that he was getting an opportunity to learn. And his behavior improvement at school not only was at school, it actually transferred over to home, where she was able to understand the importance of having a schedule for him. That had been something that had been lacking in his life, not due to anyone's fault, but she had a really inconsistent work schedule and so forth. But she was fabulous to work with. So it's not just high expectations, it's also involving the family. And to let them know that we're all on the same side, the side of the student. And also think real quickly of a student that was not my student, but he was the student of a colleague a couple of years ago. I ended up co-teaching the ELA portion, the English Language Arts portion of the day, with a teacher that I had previously taught with for about 10 years. My ESL students, Tennessee uses the term ESL for our English language learners. My students were in his classroom, so their scores were all high enough that the best placement for them was for them to be in that self-contained classroom, and I would go in and co-teach. So we had this young guy, and he was a first grader. He was already a couple of years behind. It was a lot like having a 3 or 4-year-old in the room. But both this teacher and I had really, really high expectations. We had a lot of the same beliefs about how students learn. And throughout the course of the year, he learned so much. Now, by the end of the school year, he was not totally on grade level, but he had more gain than anyone else. But something happened that changed the way I thought about that, because we would offer those scaffolds and then take them away and then move him on forward. But I came into his classroom one day. I was late getting there. I'd had another situation come up, and there was someone else helping in the classroom from a local college who was a pre-service teacher. And this teacher had given her the group of students. So as I'm putting my things down, I hear him doing and saying things that we had moved past a long time ago, because this student said things like, "Me doed it," for "I did it." We hadn't moved past that. He wasn't doing that, but I was hearing him say, "Me doed it, me doed it. It's her turn." And so I just gave him a look like, "What in the world?" And he said, "Stop. Her don't care that I say it the wrong way. Just you guys care if I do it the wrong way." And so what it taught me was, if there's anyone who doesn't maintain that same belief system that our students can do as much as we need them to, there's a kink in the chain, and kids are going to revert back to that. And that's what he was doing. So it's just a really good lesson about how important it is for our teachers to hold really high expectations for our students while still giving them supports.
It's so interesting you sharing these experiences, because I'm thinking about your experiences and I'm thinking, oh, I had something a little bit like that. And that was hard. You're right. So I'd like for you to just take a moment thinking about those teachers who really feel like they're in the trenches, they're experiencing maybe some unique challenges. Thinking, and if you will, just kind of think about, again, some of those more rural or diverse settings. Thinking about some of those teachers who face those unique challenges, specifically about engaging students or making sure that that classroom culture is very inclusive. What is some advice that you have for those teachers?
I think number one, our first role is to make sure that students understand that they have a safe place in our classrooms, that everyone is included, everyone is welcome for the assets that they bring, and that no one is considered a deficit. And obviously, like young students don't understand that language, but we know what that means, that we include all of our learners. And when teachers struggle with those difficult classrooms, because we've all had them, let's face it, the best thing that they can do a lot of times is to reach out for other support, within the school system, whether it's the speech language pathologist, whether it's an administrator that you need to help you work with a student. And sometimes we have to recruit our own help. We have to ask other teachers, what have you had success doing? I feel like we don't do a good job a lot of times as teachers of admitting, hey, I need a little bit more help, because I think we're supposed to always be the experts. And the reality is, I'm 33 years in and I still don't have it all figured out. And I always tell pre-service teachers, I caution you against any teacher who thinks he or she has it all figured out, because I'm not sure that we ever get there. But we continually learn ourselves, and we can continually apply the learning that we do to our students. And again, keeping those routines and giving kids a predictable sense of what's happening next. I feel like is just so crucial. It's an investment of time at the beginning of the year, but it's going to pay off the whole rest of the year if kids know what is expected and to feel that comfort and that sense of security.
So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that you were able to, some people heard that and sort of felt connected to that. I bet there are quite a few people who were listening truly to what you just had to say there. I'd like to just kind of shift us a little bit into our first 6 weeks of school conference that's coming up. And we reached out and we said, hey, Missy, we would love to have you. What influenced you to accept that invitation to speak at our conference?
That's a great question. So the first thing that I did, I'll be honest, Ashley, was that I looked up the conference. I looked up the conference website to see, to make sure that it was a conference that aligned with my values and my beliefs as a classroom teacher. And one of the things that I saw on the website instantly was inclusive learning, managing an environment from the first day where all students belong. And I feel like my whole career, that has been my focus, not just having high academic goals for students, but making sure that students feel like they believe. That was on the website front and center. And then when it said that one of the objectives of the conference was to allow teachers to be able to set up their classrooms and their classroom structure in a way that guaranteed success throughout the year, I was like, okay, I'm in, because I really believe in those goals, that if we manage our end of things a certain way, it's going to make the outcomes better for students, but it's going to make day-to-day life more manageable for us. And unfortunately, there is no knight in shining armor who's going to come in and do that. We have to be the ones.
We wish. We wish.
We wish. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, that is so funny. Thank you so much for sharing that. Tell us about what we can look forward to during your presentation.
Well, I'm going to talk about how to create a strong interpersonal and instructional groundwork for the whole year, and how we can all incorporate social emotional learning into our classroom at the same time that we're integrating academic content. And that will make our classroom not just a great place for learning and to make learning conducive, but it's going to make our classroom a place where we like to be, because we spend 7-8 hours a day in that setting. And the reality is that our students' learning conditions are our working conditions, and everyone's going to be the happiest if that is the ideal situation for everyone to be. So I'll talk about that. I'll also talk about high expectations and the importance of high expectations, not just in your classroom, but in your school culture and your school community as well.
All right, before we take some questions, and for those of you who do have some questions, our Kristen, fabulous Kristen, put that little nudge in the chat. If you have some questions, put those in there. But my very last question for you before we get into the chat questions is, very lastly, what do you hope educators take away from your presentation at our national conference, and how apply your insights to their teaching practices?
Absolutely. So I hope if teachers leave with nothing else, they leave with the understanding how important they are, how important their role is in the development of these young people, and how important their voices are. Because the reality is that our classroom teachers are the experts. They are the ones who spend time with students. They know what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of times that requires us to be advocates, not just for what is best for our students, but also what is best for us to create those ideal learning environments. And again, it goes back to, taking care of yourself, but having the same high expectations that we hold ourselves to for our students, because there is no one who demands more of teachers than teachers do themselves. And it's okay to have those really, really high demands on yourself, but we have to figure out a way to balance that so that we feel happy about the work that we do, that we feel energized to come back and do the work that we do, because every study about childhood achievement in school, childhood academic achievement, comes back to that the most important factor is the teacher in the classroom. And a really strong teacher can help students offset barriers such as poverty and trauma. But that teacher has to be energized to do that. And at the root of that is taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Kristen, what have you got for us?
All right. Hey, everyone. We do have a question that was asked to us, and it's specific, but maybe we can answer it in a more like general way as well. But someone is asking about advice for a student who refuses to participate in a greeting at morning meeting due to anxiety. But I'm sure, Missy, you found, especially working with your ESL students, that anxiety comes with the territory. So what advice do you have?
It does. And that's a great, I'm looking through the chat too, Christina, that's a really, really hard one for me because, I'm a little bit older. I've raised a couple of kids, and a lot of times, I'm like, you just have to do it because you just have to do it. But I do understand that some of our students do have extreme levels of anxiety. I would suggest any way that you can urge them to participate a little bit at a time, and then to ease them into that, maybe even encouraging them to sit with a buddy, or to, if you're on the circle, to stand with a buddy, and so forth. No matter what I did, I wouldn't make it a power struggle. And I say that from experience because lots of times I've made it a power struggle. And I've made it such a power struggle that the kid lost, I lost, the other students lost. So no matter what you do, don't make it a power struggle. And, hopefully they see all of the good things that are happening during that morning message, and they'll want to be included in that. And if not, then every other student who chooses to be part of that is getting what you intended. And those other students in that moment, in my opinion, take precedence over the one who's trying to disrupt it for everyone. And in this case, I don't feel like the student is. If it's true anxiety, they're not trying to disrupt anyone else. I'm thinking more of a lens where a student is using that opportunity to get attention. But if the other students in your classroom are getting what you intended for them to get out of that morning meeting, then you are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
That's really great advice, Missy. A question just came through in the Q&A feature, and this is Alexandra, and I believe they teach at a school in Thailand. So thank you so much for joining us. When working with a class of 30 students, what way would you say is effective in managing the expectations, and do things like visual boards help? So I think it's talking about setting those high expectations and managing them.
All right, first of all, I am blown away 30 students. When I first started teaching, I had 29 and 30 students, and I look back and wonder how in the world I did that. So kudos to you that you are doing that every single day. You need to be the one doing the webinar because you are an absolute rock star. But
That's right.
Absolutely. Whenever you have 30 students, you're going to have to manage in some way to make all of that flow. So what was the part of the question? I'm sorry. Kristen,
just looking for advice on how to manage all the expectations, and would visual boards help, having visuals to maybe manage the expectations, helping kids stay on track with them?
they could, as long as they don't become a focal point of, kind of so and so is here and you're here, that type of thing, because those kinds of things tend to, I feel like, come back to negative results in the end. But you're definitely going to have a way to manage behaviors and expectations. And sometimes when you're working with that many students, you're just surviving. So I am just incredibly impressed by you. I will think about you all evening when we finish this, because that is just incredibly amazing.
Yeah. So Amy has asked, Amy's moving from 3rd grade to 5th grade, and it sounds like they're going to have the opportunity to have their previous students again, which is, what a wonderful experience. But Amy's asking how to monitor and adjust things like morning meeting, closing circle, and expectations with older elementary students. And Amy's worried that they might have a hard time engaging with such an important time of the day.
Amy, those are such lucky kids, and they are going to be so thrilled to be with you again that it won't matter what it is you're trying to do at any time of the day. They're just going to be glad to be there. I had spent 30 years teaching 1st and 2nd grades, and primary age students were basically all that I knew before I moved into the role of teaching English language learners, and I had them spread out from kindergarten to 8th grade. And I can assure you that I have realized that 8th graders are just really, really big 2nd graders who aren't as cute and don't smell as great. But there's not that much difference, honestly, developmentally between 3rd and 5th graders. If you had really good routines, which it sounds like you did with your 3rd graders, those 5th graders are just going to take solace and comfort that they get to have a year like that again. And those are really some very lucky students. I would be really interested to know how you feel after this year starts, if you felt like it was easier to ease in with students you had. I looped for about 12 years, where I started out with 1st graders, took them to 2nd grade. We were together 2 years, and then, came back and started over. And I found that we saved so much time, particularly at the beginning of that 2nd grade year, because they already knew the routines. They already knew the rules. They didn't need to try any of the things they'd all tried in 1st grade, and it just made it much more seamless. So I have a feeling that you will also, as a teacher who's very, very prepared, that you'll also have that kind of experience. So congratulations to you. You're going to have a fabulous year, and congratulations to those students. They're going to have a wonderful year.
Yeah, and you made a great point, Missy. I bet they'll hit the ground running and, really just sail through that beginning of the school year. And a lot of those routines that they're going to build together will be more like reminders and refreshers, right? And really build on that to even go deeper with it. So yeah, that's amazing. Bella has asked in the Q&A, if you had to pick the number one most important piece of advice in regards to classroom management in the first week of school, what would that be? Bella's so excited to be a first-year teacher in 1st grade in the fall. So let's give her some advice.
Oh, that's awesome, Bella. You're going to love it, and the kids are going to love you. My first job was also teaching 1st grade, and my advice would be not to do as I say and not as I did, because I thought it would be really fun that we did something different every single morning, so the students didn't get bored with the routine. That was the worst advice ever. So don't do that. Whatever you do the first day, try to make the first day as much like every other day is going to be. You can still do the fun things and throw in the we're glad that you're here and the opening things, but make sure that the routine you do the first day is a lot like every other day. Because if we set up our classrooms and the first day is just marvelous and wonderful and magnificent, and we have balloons and a pony, they're going to expect that every single day. You can still do parts of those things, or you can still do things that make them think they've had those experiences, but just maintaining that routine. And I always tell newer teachers this, and I want to give a shout out to Lakin. I looked through there. Lakin actually teaches in my old classroom, my old school, and she is phenomenal. There's no one I would have left my second grade classroom to except Lakin. But advice I give to new teachers is always, it's a lot easier to start kind of tight and to loosen up than it is to start really, really loose and not have good routines or positive consequences or whatever, and then try to firm up and get control. So if you do anything, stick to those routines, start kind of tight. You can always loosen up the rules and regulations later. But Bella, you're going to love first grade. It's a marvelous age, and those students are going to love you. And I'm glad you joined us tonight.
Excellent advice. Yeah. And I think we always say, like, go slow to go fast. So slow it way on down. You know, first graders have to hear things and see things multiple times and multiple ways. So everything that you think you're going to get through on the first day, you'll probably only get through on the first week.
Yes, you will have a stack, Bella, after the first day like this. And yeah, I've taught 33 years, and the last time I was in a general classroom on the first day of school, we started on Monday. On Friday, I was still doing things that were left over from Monday. But over planning is not always a bad thing. It just means you're ready in case you have things come up. So that's okay too.
That's right. That's right. And the more you take the time to set it up slowly, you can go faster later with your academics and your deeper learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Joanna is asking, what do you suggest if the routines and rules are now falling apart because it's the end of the year?
Oh, if you figure that out, you call me and we'll write a book, because we will be millionaires. It's so hard to keep those routines at the end, isn't it? It's hard for teachers to stay in that routine. My advice is just stay strong, bend when you have to, but absolutely don't break. If you break now and lose all of your routines, it's going to be a really long 4 to 6 weeks. But teaching at this time of the year is definitely a challenge. And I would say keep them active. Make sure that they get active playtime. Maybe they take like a walk. Our school has a beautiful front yard, and at this time of the year, when I was teaching first and second grade, a lot of times we would take a little detour right out the cafeteria doors, one loop around the front yard, and then back in our classrooms, just to help settle them down and to plan things that are active in your classroom that allow them to move without losing every bit of normalcy and control. But yeah, this time of the year it's just a special challenge for everyone.
It sure is. Thank you, Missy.
Sure.
And I just wanted to acknowledge a comment, which I think it was Joanne who also asked that question. She wanted to say thank you earlier when you were talking about asking for help. She kind of said that she's felt off this year and has been worried about asking for help. And I think sometimes as educators, we do kind of shut our door and get in our own heads. And it's so important to ask for help. Missy, could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
It is so important to ask for help. And I feel like a lot of times that other people see us and they really don't understand that we're struggling in our classroom because we don't do a good job of letting them know that we're struggling. And I feel like teachers inherently want to do a good job. So we always try to give off this perception that everything is going just fine. And a lot of times when we're finally honest with someone, like, hey, I'm really, really struggling, you'll find out that the people that you think have it all together, they're also struggling. And some years are just that way. I hate buckling it down that way, but some years it's just the combination of things that are going on in your life or in their life or your overall climate of your school. There's so many factors that that go in. So thank you for continuing to plug away. But I assure you, there's nothing wrong with you. And even if you think you're off, your students are probably getting so much more than you think that they're getting just because you're showing up every single day and doing the best that you're able to do.
Thank you, Missy. Appreciate it. I think that's it for
Thank
our
you.
questions, Ashley.
That's so great. Missy, what a pleasure it's been to have you. Thank you so much for spending the past hour with us. We've truly loved learning about your work in education and some of your experiences as the National Teacher of the Year.